April 11th, 2025. It's Talkin' Giants presented by SeatGeek. My name is Justin Pennick, and I am joined by somebody special, good friend of mine, Weiss, NYG Daily from NYG Weekly. Weiss, what's going on, man? It's nice to talk Giants with another person for the first time in quite a while, instead of just talking quarterbacks or talking draft. How you doing, my friend?
Justin, how are you, my friend? It's been kind of quiet on your end. Haven't heard from you recently. So how's it going?
Good, man. Just trying to grind. That's just trying to do that. Trying to prove that, hey, I'm still here and I'm working hard and everything like that. I'm excited for this though, because we're gonna pay the bills. We're gonna talk like big picture stuff. We're gonna talk pick three, Hunter, Carter. I know you're a little bit more on Sanders than some of the consensus people, so I'm excited to hear about that and talk about the pros and cons of that. And then since I put out a mock draft last week, and I came away with all right, I know the approach that I want the Giants to take with their premium picks inside the top 105. So I'll talk more about that, and I'll get your perspective on it too. So we'll start off with this. The conversation that's eventually going to annoy people by the time the draft day comes. People are going to be really annoyed by this conversation, but we'll do it now. What's your preference at pick three? What do you want?
I want a good player. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
No. Amen. Yes.
Well, I think, it's all dependent on one and two play out, but let's just say Cam Ward goes one, and number two, one of the two blue chippers go, whether it's Hunter or Carter. And I guess the my preference is I think you take a swing on Shedeur Sanders. I know he's not a very popular prospect across the board. I think there's a lot of people that don't view him as somebody worthy of a top three or top five pick. But, as someone that's kind of followed Shadeur's collegiate career from start to finish and watched him very closely, I've watched a lot of Colorado. I even watched as much Jackson State as I could. Um, I come away thinking that this is a potential franchise quarterback. And I know when evaluating prospects, people always look at the physical traits, right? How big is he? How fast is he? His arm strength, his hand size. Can he throw? Is he fast? And all those are fair ways to look at it. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think when I always watch Shedeur, and I think one of the things that kind of goes under the table for a lot of people when it comes to college prospects, especially quarterbacks, right, is where did they go and what did they do at that program? And I saw
Hmm.
Shedeur Sanders walk into college, despite the fact that he went to Jackson State, with a lot of pressure on him, being the fact that he's Deion Sanders' dad. And then I saw him make the jump from Jackson State to Colorado, a program that I think was 1-10. And in 2 years, turned that program around. And I look and I saw his leadership. Yes, he is a polarizing figure. Yes, there's arrogance there, right? But he when I see him, I see people that captivate to him. I saw players in that locker room view him as a leader. I saw him stand up for his teammates. I saw him being that guy that was not going to allow his teammates to kind of get, excuse my language, but like bitch slapped. And
Hmm.
that's something that we've seen with the Giants. But watching him, the confidence, he doesn't shy away from anything. There's no moment that I think that's too big for him. He will play under pressure. He might not be successful a lot of the times, but it's not because he's scared of the pressure. The toughness. I think that's another thing about him that will he'll get respect in the locker room. I think he
Yep.
took a beating, 99 sacks, and I know some of it was his fault the way he played. And then the way he processes the field, man, he's surgical at times in the short and the intermediate game when you watch it. And everybody wants to talk about the arm strength. I think his arm strength is at that level that you want it to be, where you can say that guy can be a franchise quarterback. Didn't have a lot of NFL talent around him. I know Travis Hunter was there, but the offensive line was a mess his first year at
Yeah.
Colorado.
And it was
It
a mess
got
this
better.
year.
But it got better. I don't want to. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I don't want
Yeah.
to
Not
just.
not the worst, but I don't think you can watch that line and be like, this is a good line.
Yeah. So when I watch all these things and I see the impact and I look at all that, I come away saying, you know what? I think I want to take a swing on that guy. I think I'm willing to say, you know what? we are a team that is in desperate need of a legitimate swing, and I think Sanders offers at the very least a lightning rod
Yeah.
to kind of spark this organization. And
Yeah.
good or bad, I think he is worthy of a swing, in my opinion. Now, will they do it? That we can talk about that.
Right. I mean, I liked how for kind of most of this, that's not something that, something that people haven't really talked about in all this is the off the field stuff. Like you mentioned, we could talk about how he drifts in the pocket and taking sacks and why that happens, or even the major strengths of his game, which I think he is like an efficient distributor. I think in the NFL that can happen for him. And there were even times that I'm watching at Colorado too, where the more Shedeur Sanders that I watched, the more that I kind of got frustrated with Deion Sanders, because Deion, they would stat hunt, man. They would stat hunt, whether they're down by 21 points, 28 points in the fourth quarter, or they're up by 28, 21 points in the fourth quarter. Shedeur is still stepping back there. He's holding onto the ball for 4 seconds, which I don't think that's his MO in the NFL, to be holding onto the ball for so long in the NFL. He's holding onto the ball for 4 seconds, and we're looking for Travis Hunter to eventually come open on a drag or a crosser, and then we're getting stats. We're getting yards for Shedeur, we're getting yards for Hunter, and we're getting yards after the catch, and we're getting highlight plays. That's what I think it was a Deion thing. Not necessarily, certainly not a Pat Shurmur thing that he's looking to call this type of stuff. I think it was a Deion thing. And I think that gets better in the NFL, where there's going to be coaches that are going to be like, I am not going to put you in situations where you can take bad sacks all the time and hold on to the ball and, forcing you to drift and improvise and do these things that is not necessarily your main strength. But most of what you talked about wasn't really that on-field stuff. It was off the field. And probably the most frustrating part that I have found over the years of doing this with the NFL draft is we really don't have access to the most vital parts of information about these prospects. And it's not what they can do on the field. It's not their athletic testing or anything like that. It's what's going on between the ears. I've said the talking point recently. If you were to put me in a room with Kadarius Toney for 10 minutes at the Senior Bowl, odds are I maybe would have figured out that he's a fuckhead, right? And then then let's not draft that guy in the first round. But there's so much evidence, as you pointed to. I think there is a lot of evidence. Now, do I know Shedeur Sanders as a person, and does anybody really know him as a person that's kind of sitting in our seats? No. And all these teams are going to have access to sitting down with him and trying to, figure out what is true and what is not. But I think, to your point, there is so much evidence to point to that he is a worker, he is a grinder, he is a transformer of a program, and that is exactly what the Giants need at this point. They need somebody that's going to come in and transform their whole entire kind of program and franchise to be a leader and kind of do the things that he's done at both of his respective schools. Now, I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I think the lack of game-changing traits, that's why I don't think Shedeur is worth taking at 3. I think the flaws that he has in his play style, he plays like he is this creator with a big arm and super ultra athleticism. And if you have that play style and you don't back that up with the high-end traits, like a Jaden Daniels can take some sacks. A Caleb Williams can take some sacks. You want to know why? Because Jaden Daniels is fast as hell, and Caleb Williams has this awesome arm, an arm that you see once every 10, 15 years. That's why those guys can play like that, because they have those other traits to kind of back it up. And that's why I don't view Shedeur as worth it. But efficient distributor, can he throw in the short part of the field? Yes. Can he throw well in the intermediate part of the field? Yes. I think honestly, a perfect fit for Shedeur would be the Browns, ironically enough. And they're drafting number 2, and they may be interested in him or not. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you in terms of the traits. I have no argument for. The traits are not good. Not great, I should say.
Right.
The one thing I always go back to is there is a lot of room for growth, and I think that's where Brian Daboll has to come in if they do take him. The negative plays that he took, a lot of the times, a lot of these Colorado games were games that went down to the wire, that required him to, make these big time plays and big time moments. And a lot of times, when they're playing from behind, he has to be Superman.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is very important in this conversation about Sanders is despite the fact that Travis Hunter is so great and I think is the best player in this draft and is a real generational prospect coming out, and we'll talk more about that G word later. Despite all that, anything that went wrong with Colorado landed at, Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders is doorsteps. And I think they handled adversity well at times. But I do think there's room to grow. Like the negative plays is a concern, but I don't think that's I think that's a mental thing. But it's how he was forced to play. You talk about stat padding. I look at it more. Yes, they were trying to enhance his stats, and that's why I didn't bring up any of his statistics at Colorado, especially the second year. I look at it more as when you watched those games individually. There's a number of games. The Colorado State game his first year, Stanford, I believe his first year, where the games were just back and forth, and late in the game he was forced to kind of play Superman and bring them back into the game. And I know people love comparisons and ceilings and floors. The one thing I see all the time is people saying, well, he's just Teddy Bridgewater or Kirk Cousins or Alex Smith. My confidence in Shedeur is more that I think that's sort of his floor. And I think he is ultimately, if put in the right situation, can be, I think, a lot better than what people are saying his comparison is. So to me, I asked two questions about quarterbacks, right? Do I think this quarterback can be a franchise quarterback? Yes or no? Do I think this quarterback is worthy to be taken in the top 3? Sometimes you get two different answers, right? But for me, I come away yes and yes. Whereas last year, there were a couple prospects where I kind of was like, no, So in this case, I do. If they take the swing, I'll be happy. If they don't, I will understand that as well.
And I think I come away yes and no. Like, I think Shedeur can be a franchise quarterback. And so many times what it comes down with quarterbacks is kind of where you go. And
exactly.
Are you willing to work hard, which the evidence shows yes. And also Shedeur has dealt with adversity. Yes. I still have the question, though, of how are you going to deal with losing here? This is going to be the first time that you're not going to be coached by your father. Yep. He did throw his offensive lineman under the bus. Maybe it's a one-time thing. Maybe he learned from it. Like, that would be a question that I would ask Shedeur. Like, after that Nebraska game this year, publicly just threw your offensive lineman under the bus. What's up with that? What did you learn from that? Do you regret that? Is that something that you would do here? And of course he's going to say, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that here. You got to read between the lines, and you got to pick up if someone's being genuine or not. So how are you going to deal with losing here? I think is a question that I have as well. But why I brought up the stat padding too, I didn't mean it in like a negative way of Shedeur, of like, oh, these are extra stats. I think that's a positive thing for him that they were, because you're hunting for these big plays. So big plays can come, but I think also a lot of sacks and a lot of bad stuff could come from that kind of mentality. So that's why I think if you get a coach I think Shedeur's a player that needs to be reined in. Because, again, I think he's tried to be, in college, a player that he's not. I think he's tried to play hero stuff like Jaden, like Caleb, and that's just not who he is. And I think that's fine. That's why I think he can be a franchise quarterback. Do I think he'd be a Super Bowl winning quarterback? And all these dumb questions that you have to ask of if you're going to draft a quarterback in the first round. Well, what's the ceiling? Is he a Super Bowl winning quarterback, or is he a quarterback that's just going to get 8-9 wins? It's so dumb, but it is worth asking. Sometimes. So I don't know, man. Like, again, Browns, I like it because Kevin Stefanski has worked with those pocket passers. He has worked with Kirk Cousins. He's worked with Joe Flacco. Baker Mayfield, primarily a pocket passer. They've had success. They've gone to the playoffs. The Saints, ironically enough, with Kellen Moore, I also like that. They're going to be picking, inside the top 10. So I think that could be a good fit if the Giants wind up passing on him at 3, and he can sit for a year under Carr, or even take over halfway through the year, whatever they decide to do there. So I just think I root for the Giants. I don't necessarily root for this Joe Shane, Brian Dable Giants, right? I root for the Giants, and I think that they're going to kind of be gone after this year. But still, thinking about Shedeur Sanders with Brian Dable, knowing how much he wants to push the ball down the field, throw to all parts of the field, and I would think that you would want your quarterback to kind of do that anyway, regardless if Brian Dable was here or not. I have questions on if Shedeur can fully do that, fully utilize throwing to all parts of the field, fully, pushing that ball, down the field, middle of the field, all that kind of stuff. So, little different. I agree with you on a lot of stuff, but I just think the difference is, do I think he can be a franchise guy? Yes, but for me, is he worth the 3rd overall pick? No. All right, before we get back to talking with Weiss, we got to talk about DraftKings. The weather is warming up, which means it's time to head to your favorite ballpark and cheer on your home team, or watch from your couch and be at home and place your bets with our partners at DraftKings. Right now, all new customers who bet just $5, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you use our code JMFootball. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use code JMFootball. Bet just $5 on any wager, get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code JMFootball, all one word, only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is, guess what? The crown's yours.
One other thing about Fitz and where he fits, I think the Giants are a good fit because I think he does need to be stashed away. I don't think he can walk on and just be the starting quarterback week one and it's like put the C on his chest. I think there's a lot of stuff that he has to work on both on and off the field. And I think, believe it or not, I think the Giants quarterback room is set up where they can put a rookie in there, regardless who he is, and kind of, see how an NFL veteran quarterback goes through practice, watch his film. Because I do think a lot of what Shedeur's issues are in terms of, the big thing about him taking sacks is a mental thing rather than him just, I don't know if you can call it a physical thing, but I think it's all mental for him.
Yeah,
and
get
I think
rid of the ball,
being stashed away. The one sad part is, like you said, is this regime on the hot seat. Like if this was, if they weren't on the hot seat, it would be a different story. But because they're on the hot seat, because they're sort of looking out for themselves, if the season starts bad, they have to then throw the rookie quarterback in there. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying, but in theory, I think this quarterback room is set up where they can start Russ, sit Shedeur, for the first however many weeks of the season, and not rush him onto the field.
And this is where it leads to, the other options that are at pick 3, or really even, I want to talk about just our mindset when it comes to taking quarterback outside of the first round too. It leads it to the other options at 3. And again, because I am a Giants fan, I'm not a fan of the Joe Schoen Giants or the Brian Daboll Giants. I have a very morbid outlook on what this Giants season is going to be. I do not think Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen survive into 2026. I really don't. As of right now, I like the offseason that they've had. I like what they've done in the quarterback room. I think it can get them through a year if everything goes right. But I just don't currently believe in this regime. So that's why for pick 3, I think I'm rooting for a little bit more instead of putting this major investment at quarterback, especially also not just an investment in any quarterback, a quarterback that I don't think is worthy of that 3rd pick. But I think Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are going to be studs. And that would make me really excited about the long-term potential of this possible roster of adding a stud inside the top 3. And then, we'll talk about the other slots in the draft of how we want to approach that. So let me ask you this, though. I still want to stick with quarterback for a second. If the Giants walk away from this draft without a quarterback, is that something that bothers you? Because John Mara very much, and I go back to this, John Mara very much made it seem when he was on, inside the Quest Diagnostics training facility at the end of the season, very much made it seem like a goal heading into this offseason was to find the quarterback of the future. And between how Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, and John Mara were all talking, it almost sounded like they had a very good idea on, maybe who that quarterback was going to be, or even if they didn't know exactly who, that they were going to add somebody that is the future, or at least a high-end quarterback. Maybe like a Stafford, maybe like a Rodgers. Like I think that they thought that they were going to get one of those guys, or even a Cam Ward, and at least in free agency wise, they're 0 for 2. And the first 2 guys that they've gone after and the 2 guys that they've added really are only here for 1 year, and Jameis is here for 2 years for with an additional $4 million attached on the other end of it. So what's your perspective on that?
I won't be upset if they don't draft a quarterback, even though I think they should take one at 3 if Sanders is there. My thing is this offseason has been so crazy with the quarterback situation, and all indications are early on. It seemed like they made it obvious who they were in love with, right? It was Shedeur Sanders. That we saw the cleats all the time they went to Boulder, Colorado. Some of the stuff that I heard was like they were in love with Sanders, and they really viewed him as the guy. And then the offseason comes, and every single move that they've made with the quarterback, all indications have been that they don't love these quarterbacks.
Right.
And the options were Stafford and then Rodgers, and then try to get to one for Cam Ward, and then sign Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. So coming away from it, it almost seems like they're either trying to execute a perfect smokescreen, and if they do that, wonderful. I'll be like, wow. But it just seems like they don't like any of these quarterbacks, and they're essentially going to kick the can down the road with the quarterback, continue to build this roster. I don't think that's the wrong approach, despite the fact that I do like Sanders. But they need great players, man. And one of the things about last year was I always told people that I will judge Joe Schoen's roster based on the players that are on the roster, not players that are not on the roster. And as the season went along, I was incredibly patient. I was willing to be patient, but I wanted to see progress. None of Joe Schoen's draft picks got better.
No.
You can make the case some of them got worse. And I'm talking about the first, second, and third round picks. They did not get better. Nobody emerged as a cornerstone player yet. Now, Malik Neighbors was great. I know they sold the first year, but let's see this 2024 draft. Let's see what happens in another year. But this team needs great players. And Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter are great players. The Giants need those kind of players. Yeah. I understand, the edge rushing situation, but listen, I'm sorry, but Kayvon Thibodeau is not stopping me from drafting Abdul Carter.
No, not at all.
Deontay Banks is certainly not stopping me from drafting Travis Hunter. Neither is Paulson Adebo and his $18 million a year salary. The Giants need great players. I think they're positioned where they can get a great player, an instant impact player at a premium position. And if that's the route they go, that's fine. So no, I won't be upset. Look, I think they should take a quarterback that could be available at 3, but more importantly, Joe Schoen's roster needs great players. Above the quarterback situation, I think they have to build this roster. And right now, this roster looks very bad. And I think the one thing, and I'll pass it, I know we have to talk about free agency, but I don't want to save this until then, but one of the areas that Joe Schoen made the biggest investments in terms of draft capital was his secondary. Deontay Banks, Drew Phillips, Tyler Nubin, premium picks, right? Even Dane Belton, he drafted in the 4th round.
Flott was a 3rd round pick.
Cordell Flott was a 3rd round pick. So you're talking a first, that 2/3, a second, and a 4th all went into the secondary. And yet they still had to go out and pay Paulson Adebo $18 million a year. And they still had to go out and sign Javon Holland. Not bad signings. I'm just saying, after all the investment in their secondary, they still had to spend on getting some big name free agents to come there. So that speaks to how his roster building has worked out so far.
And that is exactly why I would kill to be a fly on the wall. And like, what is John Mara thinking right now? Even the edge rusher, which I think John Mara can talk himself into. If you take Abdul Carter, oh man, we're recreating what we had in 07. I think you can kind of get him in that mentality of 07 and 11. We got 4 pass rushers. Now the difference was with those pass rushers is I think one of them was a 1st round draft pick and JPP in 10, and the rest were kind of 2nd and 3rd round guys or 4th round guys. But I think that's an easier problem and maybe even a better problem to have. But also, like, if you're John Mara and you're like, all right, John, remember how we told you that we thought Shedeur would be the guy? And, I really think it have this theory. And, I think both of us maybe heard some whispers that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll saved their jobs by pitching John Mara, a quarterback of the future. And that quarterback of the future was Shedeur Sanders. Oh, his marketability in New York. He's going to be buddies with Malik Neighbors. These guys are going to take over New York. And we know that Mara cares about that shit. Because the first thing that he said when Saquon walked was, oh, we just lost our most popular player. Not that this is one of the best running backs in the league, or what is our offense going to do? How are we going to score points? Oh, that's our most popular player. That's the first thing that came out of his mouth on television. So, again, think that they saved their jobs with Shedeur Sanders, and now we're pivoting to, you want to take Travis Hunter when we've just spent $20 million a year on a corner, when we just took Deonte Banks 2 years ago, all the investment. And I think it's a good thing. I'm not saying that, I don't want to take Hunter and I don't want to take Carter for that reason, but John Mara's got to be sitting there as a business owner, as a person that's putting his money into the Giants, being like, this asset allocation is kind of crazy. And I walked into this offseason thinking that we would get one of these quarterbacks that you sold to save your own asses, and now we're not going to get any of them. We're not getting Stafford, who you wanted to give $110 million guarantee to. We're not getting Rodgers. We're not getting Cam Ward. And it turns out you don't even want Shedeur when you talked him up, possibly in the month of December and January. So again, I just really want to know what he is thinking about asset allocation, quarterback, and all this shit. I know things change as months go on, but I would kill to be a fly on the wall in terms of what is he thinking right now.
That's why I don't think you can rule out this whole smokescreen thing to get Sanders to 3, even though it seems like that's what's going to happen.
That would be a hell of a smokescreen, like offering Matthew Stafford $110 million and guaranteed. No. I think here's what I think, right? And we can have this quarterback conversation. I think their goal was, hey, let's get Stafford, and we're going to build it around Stafford. Yeah.
That plan didn't work. And then it was, hey, let's get Rodgers, but getting Rodgers doesn't rule out drafting a quarterback, right? And then you get Russell. I think what their options was like, hey, if we get Stafford, we can kick the can down the road. If we get Rodgers, it gives us insurance for the draft. If we get Russell, it gives us Russell Wilson, it gives us insurance for the draft. What I am confused about is, like you said, what was the plan that you laid out to save your job? Because if the plan at the time was, and they had the number one pick until about like week 15 or whatever, week 16, is like, what was your plan in week 16 to, like, when you laid it out, did you lay out Stafford, Rodgers, draft, whatever? Or like, I want to know what, because I think, like you said, I think they sold the draft prospect, right?
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the lines, maybe when they didn't have the number one pick, maybe they went back to John Mara and said, hey, we don't have the number one pick. We don't really want to trade up. We could potentially go get Matthew Stafford. And that will put us kind of, in this position where we're playing meaningful games, right? Because Stafford is a great quarterback.
Right.
And I think John Mara signed off on that because John Mara wants meaningful football, right?
Yes.
Once they struck out on Stafford, I think then they pivoted back to the draft. Then Tennessee said, no, we're staying at one. We're staying at one. Stay with me. Tennessee said we're staying at one. Then it becomes, okay, what are our options? Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
Now it's a situation where Rodgers even says no to them. So it's almost like they're on like plan D, right?
Which is crazy, man.
Of a plan that was revised after the season.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
All while, and this is all while, he came out and said, I don't know how good this roster is, but we're going to keep the GM around for the 4th year.
Yeah.
All right. Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. There's still plenty of time to break this down. I'm going to have some other guests on. We're going to talk about this too, but Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, where do you have a preference? Because for me, I'm a little bit more up in the air right now in terms of what I think. But Hunter is pretty sick.
I love Travis Hunter. I think that's about as, I hate the word that gets thrown out a lot, but he is a generational prospect. Yeah, he's a generational prospect. I think he's the best receiver in this draft, and I think he's the best corner in this draft.
I agree.
And I think you can play him at receiver, you can play him at corner. I would love to see him at receiver. I love his size and his speed, and I think he's got good hands. I think he's going to play corner, but I just think this is on the field. You're getting as I mean, to me, he's like a gold chip player because he's elite at two spots. I've never seen something like that before.
No.
And then
Consensus, I think number one at both. Like I don't
yeah,
know if I mean number one we've never seen, not never, but like when's the last time? Then Charles Woodson do a little bit of both sides. Dion obviously did both
yeah.
sides, but I don't know if that was not established until they got into the NFL. I'm also, I'm a little too young to really fully remember that.
Like I
But
remember, I remember thinking like when Terrell Pryor went from quarterback to wide receiver and then had 1,000 yards receiving.
right, but that was a
I was like,
transition that was made in the NFL. I mean,
yeah, I
you
was
know,
thinking, I was like, that's amazing, right? Like
yes,
a guy that played quarterback goes to receiver in the NFL and he has 1,000 yard receiving. This dude, I think, I it wouldn't shock me if there's a year where he has 1,000 yards receiving, or like 800, 900 yards receiving, and then a year later he's a corner and has like 5, 6 interceptions.
wow,
Like he's just that kind of a elite prospect, and I've never seen anything like that. So I would Travis Hunter to me would be my gold pick, but Abdul Carter is. I mean, I don't think he's Micah Parsons good, but he's not that much below him.
right.
Couple injury concerns, but I think Abdul Carter he walks in is already to me um, kind of a solidified pass rusher in the NFL. His bend, his speed. A lot of people question against the run, but I don't really have a lot of concerns about that. Would really if you talk about what John Mara's thinking, John Mara missed out on Michael Parsons. Well, this could be his Michael Parsons
Right.
replacement. I think that's something that he's thinking too. But I mean, you can't go wrong with either one. But to me, I think Travis Hunter is one step ahead of Abdul Carter, and that's saying a lot because I do think Abdul Carter is a blue chipper.
If they keep it at 17 games, which I don't think they will, the NFL, they even need 58 yards per game to get to 1,000 yards. If they bring it up to 18 games, that's 55 and a half yards per game that he would need to get to 1,000, which, I mean, hey, that's, if you're going to manufacture 10 to 20 snaps a game, you're going to get him the ball, right? That's 3 or 4 catches, 55 yards. That's a stat line that three, 4 catches a game, I feel like is Darius Slayton numbers here, and that's our wide receiver one for the last couple of years, for God's sakes.
Let me tell you how high I am. Let me tell you how high I am on Travis Hunter. I think there'll be stretches of the season where he'll be playing strictly receiver, and there'll be stretches of the season where he'll play corner.
Wow, yeah, because I could see, and this is where it makes it easier to have a guy like Deonte Banks around, where I could see him sitting for a series or two on corner, and then he can play an entire series at wide receiver instead of a snap here and there. Now, they could do the whole, all right, you're going to come in on this 3rd and 5, and you're going to run a drag or whatever, and if you're in off coverage, we're going to throw you the ball, and you're going to do yards after the catch, and you're going to do the stuff that you do, right? And it's just how smooth of a runner he is after the catch, slippery, breaking tackle, shit like that. I could see that, and then you play full-time at corner or just taking him off the field, and that's where you can feel okay with taking him off the field because, it's like, well, you can get by with a former first-round pick in Deonte Banks, who's expected to be, at this point, a CB2 anyway, even if Travis Hunter is drafted by the Giants. That's still an expectation for Deonte Banks.
Let's say he goes to Cleveland. He's the best offensive player on the Cleveland Browns. He's the best skill player on the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. Yes.
So they would be naive not to play him at receiver. I mean, They have Denzel Ward on defense, so they have a cornerback one. I would think that the upside, his impact on the game would be more a receiver for them. So, look, this is a unique. This is, I think, the NFL's version of Shohei Ohtani, and we're going to see how teams breaks out. Is it game to game? Is it depending on the matchup? Like this is a unique player that's coming out, and I think Giant fans that are dying for a quarterback, I think if they get Travis Hunter, I think this is one of the more unique stories of the NFL season, how this whole thing plays out.
Yeah, I agree. Full-time, I would put him more or less as a corner because of what makes him great as a receiver is the ball skills, being able to go up and pluck that ball in the air, and I think that's why he can be an elite corner. Even though I think there are parts of his game, and I'm a little surprised to see that more people aren't talking about the raw parts of his game as a corner. I think there are some rawer parts of his game. I think he plays a little too upright. I think sometimes he can get in some bad positions, and if you're playing a little upright, you're getting a little grabby. Maybe you're losing leverage, but you could just make up for it all by going after the football when it's in the air. And that's his trump card. That's why he's going to be good to great or even an elite player, because he is going to do that better than any other player that we've almost ever seen, or at least in a very, very long time. Just wire corners because they can't catch and they can't go after the ball, and that's why they're corners, right? Well, he can do that, and he literally does play wide receiver. So yeah, we're gonna.
And he checks off the John Mara marketability.
Oh, yes, 100%. 100%. All right, Weiss, why don't you shut up for a second, because the MLB season is finally here, and with SeatGeek being MLB's official ticket marketplace, your tickets are fully guaranteed and instantly fulfilled in your account after purchase. No anxiously waiting for an email hoping that some random guy sees it and your tickets are going to show up, because it's the official ticket marketplace now of the MLB, which is awesome. And with our partners at SeatGeek, you can now get 10% off any tickets with code GIANTS2025 with over 28 million downloads. SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app in the world. There's concerts, sports, festivals, and more. And right now you get tickets to baseball games, NBA, and NHL, not to mention tons of concerts and other festivals. And you can meet me at Charlotte Motor Speedway Memorial Day weekend, and you can either say hi to me or you can punch me in the face. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know if you're getting a good deal. Just look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. You know we came through for you guys too. You can use code GIANTS2025 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code GIANTS2025. Back to talking with Weiss. Yeah, I think we already touched on this. What's an easier dynamic to try and balance Hunter in the secondary or Carter as pass rush? I don't. If I'm John Mara, I'm viewing it as, well, why are we trading for Brian Burns, and why are we drafting Kayvon Thibodeau with the top 5 pick if we don't truly believe? Maybe that's him saying that. I'm not saying that. Like I'm like, add both of these. Add one of these guys, and it's turned into a very good problem that the Giants don't typically have in terms of depth. I love it. I think it's easier to do as a pass rusher, to get you 60 to 70% of the snaps, and I don't necessarily view that as like a quote unquote rotational player, because I think it's good to rotate your pass rushers in and out, especially when Kayvon and Brian Burns, they're not that great against the run, and shit like that. So I'm okay with that. Quarterbacks outside of round 1.
I don't like any of them. I don't think any of them I would pound the table for at 34. Jalen Milroe's athleticism is the only thing that has me intrigued, but I don't think he can throw the ball well. And I'll just Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, Dylan Gabriel. I mean, these guys? They're not guys that I would use a second or third round pick for. Maybe 99, I'll consider actually 99 I wouldn't mind, but when you're talking 34 and 63, I think.
65, yeah.
65. I just think those are two really, really, really good players. And the way this draft is, after about like the 16th or 17th best player, I think 18 to 60, I wouldn't be surprised how that whole thing plays out.
Yeah, I am really fascinated to see, especially even pick 34, how that plays out. Because I think in terms of the names that are going to be present at 65 and even 99 and 105, I think there's going to be fun names that are available in that third to fourth round. And that it's crazy how different that third round pick is, right? Where you have the first pick of the third round, and then we have one of the last picks of the third round because it's that comp pick, right? So, but the names that are going to be present there between running backs, interior D-line, edge
interior
rushers,
O-line,
wide receiver, interior O-line, I think those are some of the deepest positions, especially in that territory. But pick 34 is quite interesting to me. I actually have I did this exercise when I was on the train. I took screenshots of the consensus board.
Yep.
And who are the players that are available between 24 to 44, 10 picks before the Giants pick and then 10 picks after. In the following positions, I have running back, wide receiver, offensive tackle, interior offensive line, defensive line, and edge rusher. So I want to talk about that, but I think you want to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say for me, that sweet spot at 34, interior O line, I think it's loaded. When you look at the names that could be there, potentially be there, and that's looking at mock drafts, looking at big boards. You look at the interior, the defensive line as well. Um, you know, Tyleik Williams, Kenneth Grant.
Yeah.
I think Nolan and Harmon are going to go in the first round, but um, Alfred Collins. I think T.J. Saunders. I think there's so many good interior linemen, but I really that for 34, I think you can get a solidified guard. And one thing about me, Justin, the last like 3-4 years, I've been harping on this. Enough of the open competition, bring in all these vets and let them compete. Solidify your offensive line.
Yeah.
I was all for overpaying for a guard last year. Trey Smith was my number one target this year if it hit the market. Solidify your offensive line. You pay John Runyon. He is what he is. He thinks he's an average guard. I think he's an average guard. But invest some capital. I think 34. If they were to set at 34 and get like a Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, I think I'm saying his name right.
Yeah,
or
no, that's right.
Yeah, or Donovan Jackson's a guy I really, really like at 34 as well. I don't know. I don't know if he even gets there. Maybe Tyler Booker falls out of that first round. He's there. Jonas Savina, I think, from Arizona. That's another one. But just doing these mocks, when I get to that 34 spot, and what I do is I'll do 5 mocks across the board, and I see, and again, it's not a mock draft's a mock, but when I get to that 34 spot, consensually, I see a guard where I'm like, damn, I want to take that guard. So to me, that's a sweet spot for an interior offensive lineman.
Yeah. The question is are they going to be available? Because I did an exercise today where I wanted to look at the players that were media consensus board ranked inside the top 105, because the Giants have 5 picks inside the top 105. And I wanted to do a breakdown of how many players were available at each position within the top 105. 7 quarterbacks and 7 running backs. And you can even make an argument that there may be more running backs that deserve to be in the top 105. Like, I think right now, running back devalued position a little bit, even amongst people in the, consensually. And then quarterback, I think these guys are hyped up a little bit because it's quarterback. There are 15 wide receivers, and I'm including Travis Hunter in that. Tight end, there's 7. Interior offensive line, there's 8. Offensive tackle, there's 11. I don't feel like that's a ton, maybe compared to past years. And I'm going to do this for past years too. And some of the interior offensive linemen that are listed, some of them are going to be tackles. Like I know Kelvin Banks, Dane Brugler has him listed as a guard, but the consensus board has him ranked listed as a tackle. And I think he can be a tackle in the NFL. So that gets a little blurry there. Weiss, there are 12 interior defensive linemen inside the top 105, which I think that is super unique and not an every year thing. There are 19 edge rushers, 4 interior linebackers, 5 safeties, and only 11 cornerbacks, where usually it's wide receivers and corners that I would say are typically the positions that are 1-2 within the top 100 that have the most guys. This year, it's edge rusher 19, wide receiver, followed by interior defensive line that are the 3 most populated positions within there. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, the crazy thing is even after last year's draft, the big talking point was like, hey, 2025 is all about interior defensive linemen, running backs, and offensive linemen.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how this thing plays out. I do love the running backs as well. Quinshawn Judkins might be my NFL draft crush. I think the Giants are going to draft the running back fairly high in this class.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not be surprised if pick 34 is a running back, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Junkins because he's listed as 52 right now.
Exactly.
They just conducted a top 30 visit with Caleb Johnson, who's 59th. Right.
And they hired the Iowa running back coach too.
Yes.
Right. Liddell Betts, the former Washington running back. So yeah, man, I think the Giants need interior defensive linemen. They need interior offensive linemen, and they need more, some more skilled players. And I think with the running back, with the D line, and with the guard, I would just love if they're able to get like a day one guard that just steps in. That's a spot, a good player, clean player. I think there's going to be somebody there, hopefully,
Yeah.
for them at 34. And I've been harping this for years, man. Solidify your offensive line.
I agree with you. And I think I have this theory that I think the NFL is a league that learns things, and it's cyclical, right? Right now, I think we're in an NFL that has seen the way that the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl, number one, and number two, they have seen the way that Patrick Mahomes has lost both of his Super Bowls. The Chiefs have lost both of their Super Bowls because they faced pass rushers and pass rushes that have been great. Even the Bucs a couple years ago, underrated, it's pretty damn good. But also, more importantly, for this year, the Chiefs had a guard playing tackle. And I think in an ideal world, obviously you want to avoid that, but even a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, they're indestructible, they're, unstoppable, and they're inevitable, winning all these one-score games, but they had eventually, when push came to shove, they lost the Super Bowl because they didn't have the offensive line to match up with what the Eagles were doing defensively, right? And they have a damn good offensive line. My only worry is, especially with pick 34, 65 and 99, I'm not as worried about this, but the quality of player gets less and less the more that you go, and the draft just becomes more of a crapshoot. I'm worried that that player and that interior offensive lineman, tackle / interior defensive lineman, they won't be there at 34. Josh Simmons, Josh Connerly are 25th and 35th on the consensus board right now.
I love that. I love Josh Simmons, even with the injury stuff.
Yes, I love Josh Connerly, but I don't see a world where he's not a first-round pick. I just don't, especially when some of these other tackles have, like, length questions and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think Josh Connerly, like, the fact that he's 35th on the consensus board, I think is crazy to me. Tyler Booker from Alabama, he's 28th. Gray Zabel's 29th. Like, these are back end of the guys that are going to be, back into the first round guys that they're ranked right now. But again, I don't see those guys lasting until the back end of the first round. Donovan Jackson is ranked 37th. Those are the three interior offensive linemen. I'm putting that in quotes for podcast people, because that's just how they're listed on the site. I know Donovan Jackson was a tackle. So was Gray Zabel, but Gray Zabel actually is going to be an interior offensive lineman. So my worry is, and I'll just talk about the defensive line and the interior D-line guys. The interior D-line guys that are listed between 24th and 34th. Walter Nolan's 30th. Derek Harmon's 31st. Talik Williams is 43rd from Ohio State. And I'll even sneak in Darius Alexander, who's 46th. So
Toledo, right? Good player, too.
Yeah, from Toledo. Senior Bowl, crushed at the Senior Bowl, and I'm excited for him. I think that there's a better chance that an interior defensive lineman is there, but still, like, these are all guys that could go in the first round, whereas like a position like cornerback is way thin, where you have Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, Barron from Texas as like three guys that can go inside the top 15, and then there's this major drop-off to Maxwell Harrison, who has this consensus board ranking at 36. So there's this major drop-off. We have to hope as Giants fans that a shit ton of receivers go in the first round, that they're overvalued, even though I don't love the receivers in this class, especially the top-end ones. I don't love them. I don't think they can be like alpha number ones. I get way more excited about guys like Jack Besh and Jaden Higgins that are like second to third round guys. I get way more excited about them than taking about some of these other guys in the top end of the first. Have to hope that quarterbacks go. A team bites the bullet on Jackson Dart. Maybe a team bites the bullet on Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck. Have to hope that maybe running backs go in the first round. But still, like, I feel like we're grasping for straws because I think teams are going to value the same things that the Giants want to value in defensive linemen, offensive linemen, and particularly offensive tackles.
Yeah, one other thing I want to talk about, you made a good point, is if the Giants go Abdul Carter at 3, if you're a Giant fan, you got to hope Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams, James Pierce Jr., Nick Scorin, and then maybe even a guy like Landon Jackson from Arkansas, and the Boston College guy, Donovan Izaraku, I think his name is.
Yeah.
You hope there's a run on edge rushers there too, because I do think teams value edge too, and kind of getting a good edge rusher on a rookie contract. So if you take Carter, after Carter, hope that like 6 other edges go in the first round. I think that's plausible. If they go Travis Hunter, you really got to hope that there's a run on corner. Jody Barron, Texas, Benjamin Morrison, Notre Dame. You talked about Maxwell Harrison. We're seeing Azari Thomas from Florida State. He's getting some first round love. He's making some top 30 visit. Siobhan Ravel, the East Carolina corner that tore his ACL.
Yeah. Giants had a top 30 visit with him, which I kind of, he has a board ranking of 39th right now, and I'm like, oh, that kind of stuck out to me as we're wondering what's going to happen with that 34th pick. And I think Giants still have about until next Wednesday to do top 30 visits, so all those reports are going to come rolling in. But I'm trying to look and be like, oh, who have they met with that could be an option at 34? He was one of them. I thought that was really curious.
And then the D lineman, even if I think Walter Norman's going in the top 20.
Has to.
Derek Harmon is also going in the top 20. I think Kenneth Grant, Tyleek Williams will be in that between 19 and 32 range. But when you start to go down the line, like you talk about Darius Alexander, Jordan Phillips, my Maryland guy, TJ Saunders, Dion Walker from Kentucky, kind of a polarizing prospect. Joshua Farmer, Florida State. So even if they don't see value at 34, I do think at that 65 spot, Alfred Collins could be there. Darius Alexander could be there. Jordan Phillips.
Do you think they trade back? I could see Joe Shane doing that.
At 34?
At 34.
I could see it if you could pick up an additional 4th round pick.
Yeah.
I could see it because then you would position yourself to have 2/3 and 2/4. And like I said, I think this draft, the meat of this draft is going to be 2 to 4, which is, I guess, every year, right?
Yeah.
But I think what I'm going to be rooting for is going to be dependent on what happens at 3. The Giants go Abdul Carter, I'm open for a run on edge. If the Giants go Travis Hunter, I'm open for a run on corner. Because I do think that if they don't draft the edge at 3, I still think they should look at edge at 34 and definitely those 2 third-round picks. So, and I think value could be there. So it's all dependent on what happens at 3.
Yeah.
Will depend on how I root for the rest of the night. But right now, I sit there, man, that interior O-line spot, if they can grab one of those guards that I mentioned, I would be. Donovan Jackson's a guy I really like from Ohio State. I would be thrilled. And he talked about Josh Connerly, Oregon. Oregon has the other tackle, too, a Johnny Cornelius that I think could be in play at 99 if the Giants want to go tackle. Kind of more raw, but I think he's also kind of got good size and athleticism that I think he can potentially develop into a tackle.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated to see how it plays out. And I've never been more certain of a philosophical approach I'd want the Giants to take. But my only question is, and my only thinking is I think the rest of the NFL is also thinking that and knowing that, like, hey, I just don't buy some of these receivers at the top. I really don't. Like the fact that Matthew Golden right now could be a top 15 pick, I think is crazy to me. Like I don't see 98th percentile 40-yard dash speed. I got, some people disagreed with this, and that's. I'm not
even a fan of McMillan.
I'm not a fan either. Like especially as a top 10 pick. We're talking about guys that are going to be taken in the top 10 and top 20. I would put all 4 of the wide receivers that went in last year's draft over all these guys, including Brian Thomas Jr.
I would take Tyler Warren over McMillan if I'm in need of a skill player.
Yeah.
Give me Tyler Warren.
So, like, even like Emeka Egbuka, like, this is a slot-only guy that I think he's going to be good in the NFL, but you have to ask yourself if that's going to be a guy that you're going to take in the first round with a top 20, top 25 pick. You kind of have to know that you're going to get, like, this slot-only guy that doesn't have these elite traits. Now, his floor is really high, but, again, like, what are you getting out of this slot-only guy that's going to give you 80 to 90, maybe even close to 100 catches a year, but he's going to give you 10 to 13 yards per reception. That's kind of what what you're going to be getting at there. So yeah, I'm fascinated.
Outside of Travis Hunter, I don't see a wide receiver 1, bona fide wide receiver 1 in this draft.
No, I think Jaden Higgins could be. But outside of that, I think Luther Burden can be. I love Luther Burden. I need to figure out why the hell 75% of his catches were under 10 air yards. Because a couple years ago, Treylon Burks, same thing. And then it just kind of came out like, yeah, this dude just doesn't know the playbook. Like he doesn't know plays, and and I think he botched some of his pre-draft interviews, and that was because of that. So Tennessee takes him as like this A.J. Brown replacement, and I think you've seen kind of how that's played out in the NFL. Didn't know the playbook at Arkansas, not translating well to the NFL. Luther Burden, I think he had bad coaching and bad quarterback situation. I need to figure out, is it a team that just didn't know what to do with a talent like Luther Burden, or is it, oh, you're catching 75% of passes within 10 air yards because you don't know where to go and you don't know what to do? That's what I need to figure out about Luther Burden. But anyway,
would love Luther Burden to go to Buffalo.
That's my TED Talk. Yeah, that would be fun. That could be like who they thought like Amari Cooper would be in a way.
Yeah,
if it was 7 years ago. I think that maybe, Weiss, I think that may be it, man. We're creeping up on like 55 minutes, and we talk some ball, we talk some Giants, which I love to do. You got anything else for me, man?
No, man. I just want to wish you luck. You've always been good to me. I think there's been a lot of conversation. Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation. Seeing what a lot of people have said about everything that's happened, but just you always have my support, and I think you're a good person. Everybody has to do what everybody has to do. It's not going to get into all that, but you continue to have my support. I think you do everything you do. Everything you do it well. You come from a good place, and I wish you the best of luck, man. In this new chapter of Talking Giants, and I hope we come out of the draft with a good players, because meaningful football matters. I think for us, especially people that create content. I think looking at Tankathon in October is not fun.
No,
and so I'm hoping that Giants can get some good players and can turn the corner. But yeah, man, I just happy for you and your new chapter. Hope everything goes well. It was a tough time, but wish you all the luck, my man.
No, thank you. And we may be chatting soon here and there, so stay tuned for that. I'm excited. We're working hard over here. I'm trying to grind out as many kind of shorts as I can. And hey, when I'm doing those shorts, I'm kind of doing write-ups of players too. I know I don't do long form stuff when it comes to the draft, obviously outside the podcast, but trying to just crank out as many players as I can, have at least some thoughts on them. Root for the guys in blue. I'm rooting for the Giants to get better. And you said players, plural, which is key. Obviously that's what we're all rooting for. So Weiss, I appreciate you. Go check. I mean, you know Weiss, NYG Daily, NYG Weekly as well. Appreciate you guys. We will see you I believe on Tuesday, and I am hoping to have another guest on. We'll see you then. I'm still working on my outro. That just may become a running joke that I'm still working on my outro, and I'll see you then.